Hi everyone, thanks for coming to our fourth talk, Art Making in Singapore, Opportunities and Challenges, with our speakers and moderator, Dipali Gupta and Khairulddin bin Abdul Wahab, moderated by Gabriel Loy. I'm going to quickly introduce the speakers before I let them begin the discussion. So Dipali Gupta is an artist living and practicing in Singapore and Malaysia. Her practice is an exploration of societal constructs from the domain of the feminine by incorporating sounds, visuals, and movements to deconstruct socially lived realities in order to generate new meanings. Khairulddin bin Abdul Wahab was presented the 2018 UOB Painting of the Year Award for his painting titled Rite of Passage. He has also participated in various local and international group exhibitions since 2010. Gabriel Loy, the moderator, is currently a part-time lecturer at Nanyang Academy of Fine Art and director of exhibitions at 1961, a contemporary art project space based in Singapore, and he has previously worked for Tintype Gallery and Pace Gallery in London. Please give a warm applause to our speakers and moderator.
Welcome and thank you all for coming and joining us this afternoon. There's a huge sea of white in the front. And our topic for today is art making in Singapore, opportunities and challenges. For me personally, there's always been a real interest in the mechanisms and infrastructure of the art world and art practice. And the name of my gallery, 1961, actually derived from an artwork I made as a budding young artist, where I had a bit too much time. And I calculated the average year of birth of all the 110 artists listed in the Taschen publication Art Now, Volume 4. And in 2014, when I made the work, I was actually quite surprised to find out that what you would describe as art now, so the most important artists in the world that you need to know now, were born pretty much a generation before me. And as a young graduate, it meant a number of things. Firstly, that there was a long journey ahead of me, but also that young artists had to sort of pay their dues and allow time for their works to mature. So we've got two artists today at slightly different points in their career to share with us some insights into what it's like to be a practicing artist in the local and regional context. And I thought we could begin this conversation getting to know a little bit more about your practices and your recent work. Dipali, would you like to go first?
Hi. Okay, I sound very different on the mic. All right. So my art practice is about, I use a lot of videos, sounds, and materials to create works. And I talk about the place of female sexuality in our society. What does it mean to be a woman or a girl? And what does it mean to hold your position as a person of the world? So I create videos which look like still life videos, but I infuse them with sex toys and vibrators to make a commentary on how it is okay to we all have a right to our own pleasures. So that's largely what my work is all about. Apart from that, I do other works as well. I mean, like I make drawings with vibrators. And also another trajectory. I have just moved from Singapore to KL after spending more than 7 years in this country. And I have this connect with Singapore, which is very strong. And so I make works regarding Singapore, which I think for me, it's like home. Yeah. So that's...
Hello. So for me, I'm primarily a painter. You can see my work at the back actually, and it's the wall there. So my research interest is mainly, currently I would say, this Southeast Asian martial art form called Silat, but my interest in it lies in the cultural and more about the spiritual aspect of it. I'm not so much interested in the combat sports or the self-defense aspect of Silat, but as in my research, as I delve deeper, I realized that this Silat practice is actually a microcosm of Malay culture, because there's an intersection where spirituality, faith, shamanism, even Malay mysticism intersect, and it's something that you don't really find anywhere else. But the idea of spirituality and martial art is not really unique in Asia because it exists in other forms of like Muay Thai with Buddhism, like the samurai with the Bushido, which is derived from Shinto, which is like kind of like a subset of Buddhism. So this area of research is where I gain my sort of ideas for my paintings. Yeah.
And so Kai has a painting at the back of the room actually. It's on the, is it by the blue wall? It's on the right wall over there if you guys want to have a look at it later. Maybe the first thing we should address, Dipali, your work dealing with sexual pleasure and sex toys. You also have a really young teenage daughter.
Yes, I do.
So there's a bit of a shock factor to the work. And how do you sort of engage it with your daughter?
Actually, I'm very open with her about the whole sexual pleasure thing. It's considered to be a taboo in a lot of in society in general, you know, irrespective of, you know, which culture you come from. And but I think that times are changing, and we should be able to talk about it more openly. And it just needs a place in the world. I mean, you cannot deny the fact that you have it, and you know, and you need to release it, right? So yeah. So, but yeah, coming back to my teenage daughter, she's quite open with it, and she knows about it. So yeah, she's okay.
And she reacts to it the same way as most of the public would react to the work, you think?
She doesn't know the taboo side of it because she was never exposed to it. She only knows it from some texts, or you know, or the kind of stories. Sorry, the kind of stories that I tell her. But otherwise, yeah. So she thinks that it's just fair, and I think she also fights for women's rights. Yeah.
Well, so I remember you mentioned to me that although your practice only began in Singapore after you moved, but you were also doing creative work in India before.
Yeah.
And your practice actually focuses heavily on quite global issues, but yet a lot of the motifs that you use in the video and in your work are very domestic and quite personal as well.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I think also very local.
Yes. I try to incorporate the land that I am in into my works, because it's very important, because the kind of connect that you have with a space that you stay in also influences your work. So while the topic is quite broad and quite global in its I mean, if you read my research or my thesis, it's quite open, and you know, it's very universal. But in the art making of it, I bring it down to there are motifs which are Indian or Singaporean in the work.
And can you talk a bit more about the video that you made and sort of using the still life as a mode of presentation?
Okay, so the video is basically making a commentary on still life paintings, or rather painting when it started, which was a very male-dominated activity, and women painters were not recognized. I mean, even today, if you see, lots of women are not their works are not recognized, but it's changing, and that's the good of it. But so the whole idea of an image being feminine and passive. So I challenged that concept by making a still life video, and it's not still life anymore. It starts to move during the duration of the video. And the other thing is, in the reason I chose still life is because when you talk about women, okay, and as soon as you put a woman's figure onto a painting, okay, it just gets objectified. So I wanted to do away with this whole idea of objectification as well, and therefore I connote the whatever the containers or the vessels that I use in the still life as bodies for women, you know, and having a right to their pleasure.
Did you notice a shift in focus when you moved from? So you're practicing. You're based in KL at the moment.
Yes, at the moment.
And you moved there very recently.
Yes.
So did you notice a shift in focus when you moved from here to KL, and also settling in a new space and a new environment?
Yeah. So when I moved to KL, okay, every land has a different challenge. So the kind of challenges that I saw and the kind of women that I came across in KL, totally different from what their challenges are different from what the challenges a woman would face in Singapore. So that way it influences my work, though the main theme remains the same because it's a broader universal theme. So there are some changes which will happen in the work going forward, but it won't change the root might not change, of it, because that root comes from a very personal place as an artist, and I cannot deny that. I mean, like, I need to make works of that.
Okay. So your work deals a lot with culture and your heritage, and I think the word that we used yesterday was Malayness, and
Kind of,
am I
yeah.
wrong? Okay. But then it came from, you said previously you were making works that dealt with politics of representation. Did I get that?
Yeah, visual representation.
So when did that sort of change, and was it because you were making work in this sort of context, in this culture, and how did that come about?
So before this series that I did, I was working mainly with found images, and I was painting basically images from my family album and stuff like that, because I felt like it's such a rich repository of memories and content and stuff that is, I suppose it's personal to me. But so as I was just looking through my images, I saw this one image of a wedding scene. It was my parents' wedding, and there was, as usually, there's a silat performance at the wedding, and so it piqued my interest, and I started to question the significance of this practice and what it means and stuff. So it was basically me just being curious about what this practice that I've seen throughout my life, but I didn't really know so much the significance of. And as I delved deeper into it, I got more into the martial art form, and so I realized that our perception of silat is one-dimensional and quite surface, because we see it as more like a sport, or it's a martial art, and in essence it's a martial art, but there's so many more dimensions to it, because the silat guru is usually also a religious sort of teacher, and he could also be a kind of shaman, so he can be like a medicine man, and he basically he performs different roles, and depending on how deep you get into the practice, it becomes more of an innate practice about looking inwards, and about spirituality, about the faith, and it's just something that I felt was quite interesting, because the extent of spirituality and faith in the practice is, I suppose from my perspective, it's not really something I see in other martial art form around me. So, I mean, there are people going into spirituality and stuff, but it seems to me like in Silat it's very it's very in depth, and it's almost cult-like in a way. So, but it's something that you really don't get exposed to, because it's not really practiced here, and it's like a fading practice. So, it's my perspective is I'm like an anthropologist looking at this practice, like an insider outsider. Yeah.
Well, I remember growing up, and you used to see the Taekwondo kids in white and then the Silat guys in black.
Yeah.
And now you see more Taekwondo kids in white, and you hardly see the neighborhood sort of Silat classes anymore. Yeah. So do you practice Silat?
So that's one of the reasons that interests me, is because it's sort of part of my cultural heritage, but I haven't been exposed to it when I was growing up, and I haven't really it didn't really sort of interest me when I was growing up. And so it's always been at a distance. So as I sort of researched more into it, I learned so much more, and it really sort of opened my eyes to the whole thing. Yeah.
So you do practice?
No, I don't practice
you
it.
don't practice
I study it.
You study it?
Yeah.
Do you ever feel the need to go
You should
into,
practice it, man.
I'm not sure I have time for that, but I might sort of get into it with people who practice it as part of my research. Yeah.
Well, it's because it's a bit different from Dipali, where you're kind of watching it from a distance.
Yeah.
Yours is very much rooted. Your work is very much rooted in kind of in the self and things that you go through as well.
I think my work is it's very performative, in the sense that it's got all these movements and it makes you think a lot. So from that, of course, it does flow from the self. Yes, there is a lot of research that goes behind what it is, because I feel like as an artist, and whatever Kai said also, that research is very important. What you feel and what you put out have an output is quite different, but it gets more enriched if you try to understand it from different points of views, and then try to make a work. So it just becomes that much more robust in that sense. It's like not just your feelings, but there is a collective, talking to a lot of people and going through the history of this problem that you're talking about, or this problem that you have as an artist. It just makes it more robust.
Well, different to Kai, where it's more you kind of noticed, or your work responds to something that you kind of noticed when you were growing up. But actually, the vibrator paintings comes from a drawing. Was it a drawing class?
Yes.
So tell us more a bit about that.
Sorry. The starting point of my work was when we were asked to do an exercise in one of our classes called drawing machines, and we were asked to kind of use machines to make art. And so I was like, okay, fine. I mean, till the last day, I didn't have anything, okay? And then I was supposed to submit something, and I was like, oh my God, I don't. And then something happened, and I kind of said, well, if you're talking about a lot of machines, then there are machines which are as tiny as a sex toy, and let's see what this is capable of producing. And that's how it started. But then going forward, I realized that this is not just, so it came out of a fun exercise, but then I realized how it relates to not just my life, but the life of a lot of other girls and women around. And upon doing a lot of research, I realized that, yes, I mean, this is one of those causes that are close to my heart, just didn't realize it for a long time. And I think I should pursue it.
And I suppose to this backdrop of educational institutions being sort of, being questioned now whether it's important. Did you make any work, Kai, in school that was integral into your practice now? And how important was the school in grooming your practice?
Yeah, for my personal experience, I was in LaSalle as well as Dipali, and I felt like the whole structure of the school really, there was a lot of freedom, and it really allowed me to pursue my research interests. And so there wasn't any limitations to what you want to do, or so the lecturers, they are more encouraging than if you're in secondary school, it's more like they just sort of give you instructions and you just carry it out. But when I was in school, when I was in LaSalle, it was more about you being on your own sort of personal journey. So you kind of propose your own research, and the lecturers guide you along, and so it really allowed me to get into a lot of subjects, topics that I wouldn't be able to if I was in like a course, for example, like engineering or something like that. It was very one-dimensional. So I was getting into like philosophy, sociology, basically anything under the sun and it allowed me to gain a sort of more holistic perspective on what my interests are and what I want to make work about. Yeah.
Well, I hope there are no engineers in the crowd.
No, I mean that in the sense that it's like one-dimensional. Like, so like if you're in engineering, you won't study philosophy, maybe, I don't know, or you wouldn't study literature. So yeah.
I think it's also because art making is such a personal journey, you know, that at first you kind of don't know what you're doing and you're still trying to figure it out yourself, and then, you know, so you need that open space and freedom to kind of explore, and you need people with whom you can bounce off ideas which can help you, you know. So it could be your peers, or it could be a teacher or somebody, but if you have an idea, I'd say that don't you know, shun it down, or don't self-censor it, or don't, you know, cut it out from your thinking process. Just keep going with it, so that, you know, it might just reach somewhere which will make you feel very satisfied. So yeah.
Right, so something I've always been quite interested in is actually the longevity of the artist. And so it's not so much how many shows you do in a year, but it's how long you do it for. And Kai, you very recently won the 2018 UOB Painting of the Year award. Have you seen much of a knee-jerk response to winning the award, and have you been getting offers from?
Okay. I mean, to be honest, I don't think like people like in the arts really make knee-jerk reactions or like decisions, because it's like it's kind of like a long-term thing, and also like the work that I won with was a new series of work which it was no one has seen it before, so I suppose it's I need to like, I mean it's an ongoing series, and I was already planning to show like the body of work this year. So in the sense, I won it with a new work. So it's, I guess people basically did like my older series is quite different. So they identify me with this new work, and I think it's just basically me winning was like getting the ball rolling. And I mean there are interests, but nothing concrete at the moment. Yeah.
Well, has that then affected the way you've made new work? Just because now you're recognized for this sort of new body of work.
I suppose yes and no. Yes, because it doesn't really, for me, it doesn't really make sense to make something that is totally different than what I'm doing now. And no, because I didn't make the work for the competition. It's sort of just happened, and then I just kind of sent it in. But the whole series of work, it's an ongoing thing. So even if I didn't win it, I would have just carried on doing the same thing. Yeah.
Well, how has it helped you though, if compared to not winning it?
Yeah, I mean, of course, winning the prize comes with its like the reward and stuff, which is I suppose you can look at it as like a form of funding for your practice. And yeah, it helps to kind of like, you're able to devote more time to focus on your practice and not worry about maybe some monetary restriction that you have or what have you. So yeah, in a sense, I look at it as kind of like free funding. Yeah.
It's not free.
Yeah, it's not free. I mean, it cost me one painting, but it's okay. I can live with it.
And similarly, Dipali, last year you won the 4th edition of the Chan Davis Prize, and for that you were awarded 15,000. You shared the prize money of 30,000 with another artist, and you were awarded $15,000 and a gallery exhibition. So how has this helped to sustain your practice at the time?
I mean, he's lucky. He's just got paintings. I've got video. It takes so much money to make those damn things.
Yeah.
No, but having said that, so the money, essentially, winning a prize, I mean, I did not intend to. I mean, I was just doing my work, and and I was just testing my limits by saying, okay, let me try and apply for it. We see what will happen. What the max that will happen is that you'll not get it. Fine. I mean, it doesn't matter. So that's how I approached it. And then when I got it, it came with. It was nice. I mean, I was happy about it because now I could go ahead and do a full kind of a show. I could use better technology. I could, get myself a nicer camera to kind of film the thing and stuff like that. So it helped in that sense. But at the same time, I was very mindful of the budgeting that I was doing because I did not want to kind of go overboard, and I wanted to, save up for a little bit so that I can sustain myself for the next few months as well. So I put a cap to it, and because when you have a lot of resources, you think that you can use them as and when, however you want. You can tend to be a little easy about it and relaxed about it. But I think it helps to not waste it away. To that extent. So yeah, I kind of planned a bit, did plan.
So the exhibition was held at Chan Hori.
Yes.
So like quick shout out if any Chan Hori people are here. But you were saying that they did help you out a lot.
Yes,
but you also had to
did.
spend quite a bit on the show.
Yes, yes.
How
So
much did you
because
spend in the end?
so I kept a cap of about half of the money, and decided to kind of go about with some 4 screens and use some programming technologies and things like that, so that just to make it a little more interesting, the kind of videos that I was doing. And I wanted the entire space to have the videos to be a performance in themselves, so the screens would go on and off and things like that. So of course the gallery was super supportive about helping me find cheaper ways to kind of do what I wanted to do without compromising on quality. So in that sense it was quite helpful.
Kai? Do you what's your upcoming exhibition, and
I think
if then you had to spend more money on your next exhibition?
Yeah, I'm having a solo sometime mid-year with UOB, and we're still planning it. But yeah, I mean, I probably need to spend some of it on the materials. But
does the work get more expensive to make? As it goes on.
It really depends on, I suppose, what you have in mind. Like if you want to do something more elaborate or something more complicated. But I mainly paint, so it's pretty straightforward for me. Like just paints, canvas, and yeah.
So actually, going back to the topic of funding, I don't know if it's okay to say, but I remember you mentioned to me that when you were doing your education, you had to set aside some funds with your family, and because you went back into education a bit later. So
yes.
How did that work?
So I finished my master's in economics and business, and then I went a full circle. I quit my job and I went back to do art. And so if you're quitting your job, you don't have money, right, to pay for your fees. So my family was very supportive, and not that we have a lot of it, but we kind of planned to keep some aside every month, so that by the time my school started, I had enough to pay my first semester fees. So yeah, I think that way, I mean, like if you really believe in an idea and you really want to do something, I think you should not worry about where you're going to get your, where it's going to be sourced from. Just go ahead and, do it.
Right, so having spoken to a few young artists recently, I suppose in our very KPI-centric work ethic, something we were speaking about yesterday as well, A few of the artists I was speaking to were very concerned and focused on doing as many exhibitions as they could. And also selling to them was a bit of a milestone, and there were a few young artists I spoke with that actually said that the more they sold and the more exhibitions they did was a sign of or measure of success to show their parents as well. Because when you leave school, when you're in school, you have all the exams and grades to show for, but when you leave, there's nothing to show your friends and family. So was there this pressure to
Performance pressure?
to perform and to do shows?
So there wasn't any performance pressure when I was studying art. I mean, yeah, but it was. I just wanted to do it to my best, to the best of my abilities, because I realized that there is my family sacrificed some money by putting it aside. So there was that thing in the back of my mind that, okay, whatever I do, I must do it to my best abilities, and then see what happens. I mean, like not be lax about it, or not waste it away. Yeah.
Kai, is there something you face as well? Performance pressure?
I suppose there's always that kind of, I wouldn't say performance pressure, but if you're not showing, it's like you're making a lot of work, and you always feel like, it needs to go out there, like your work, it needs to be presented. And personally, for me, it doesn't really affect me. I've always just taken my time with my practice. I've never been I've never rushed into trying to hit a certain milestone or something. And so yeah, I've always been just taking my time painting and just developing my practice.
Have you ever done a show where you made work specifically for a show rather than do works and then ended up being in an exhibition?
Oh, yeah. So the work that I'm doing right now, the work that is showing in Little India for the Little India Art Walk, Singapore Art Week, was specifically for that show. And I had a period of 4 months to make that work. And it's about the sounds of Little India, and I use a lot of technology in my work. So it's 3D printed sculptures that I have made, of the sound waves which I collected from the streets of Little India. So yeah, that one was a specific to that, for that exhibition kind of a work.
Yeah, well, there's sort of, I guess, maybe all around the world, but in Singapore especially, there's a lean towards being a full-time artist. Any one of you guys are full-time artists, or are you juggling 2 jobs, multiple jobs?
I'm not sure if I'm a full-time artist. I'm because I kind of have a day job, and it's what kind of funds my practice. So, but I'm freelancing for I'm writing and so I kind of balance between the two, painting and writing. And I suppose if you look at it, I'm kind of like a part-time artist, but then again, it really depends. Sometimes when I have more projects, writing projects, I would be more focused on writing, but other times I'll be focusing my time more on painting. Yeah.
So you can't sustain yourself as a full-time artist. I mean, I think it's going to be very difficult unless you have a very rich husband or a rich boyfriend. But yeah, so I'm in the middle of looking for a job to fund my practice, and also I do a bit of writing for an online magazine. And yeah, and I teach art, so on and off kind of.
Do you ever feel the sort of compelled to call yourself a writer instead of an artist?
It really depends on who I'm saying that to. If I'm meeting a client, of course, I wouldn't say I'm an artist, because that's not what he's hiring me for. So I suppose it's like I'm quite flexible. Yeah. in the sense. Yeah.
Dipali, how do you introduce yourself?
As an artist, yes, more an artist, and I think these other things that we all do are purely just to make money so that we can fund our practice. I think that's the goal. Most artists do that, like, if I'm not wrong, I mean, yeah.
Well, interestingly, I think there's sort of this pressure to label yourself whatever that pays you best, and but then historically, most artists actually had 2 jobs or did other things as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I asked if you introduce yourself as a
Okay.
writer.
I think
Artist, writer, or something like that. How do you how do you
yeah,
do
something like along those lines. But I think we were speaking yesterday as well. Like, as an artist, you need to be good at. Of course, you need to be focused at making art, but you also need to be good at the art of making money away from art, in the sense that you need to fund your practice, but you need to do something else that basically to
so that you can make art?
yeah, so you can pay the bills and stuff. It's very practical and yeah, it's
Necessary.
Yeah.
But you sort of being an artist is essentially a full-time job. You're never, I think you're never quite a part-time artist, and
No.
there must be times where you wanted to take 6 months in the middle of nowhere in India to breathe in fresh air and read books. But how do you relieve that? How do you think we can relieve that pressure of having to make?
Doesn't
It's,
happen, man. It really doesn't happen. Even if you go on a holiday, you're still thinking about, oh, what else can I do about this? So I think it's in your brain. It's just messed up. You'll get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you'll be thinking, oh, but I can do this. I need to do this way. No, but I have to go and change this right now, kind of a thing. So, yeah, you're always a full-time artist in your head, kind of a thing.
Well, do you ever have time to read, or juggling with being a mother as well? Do you ever have time to read and
Yeah.
to,
So I don't have time. Sometimes I don't have time to read. So I go onto YouTube, and when I'm brushing my teeth or when I'm in the shower is when I'm listening to all these talks, like or the podcasts and things like that. Yeah.
But you always end up on cat videos, right? That's cat videos. That's where we all end up.
No, I don't. I have not gotten hooked to it.
And Kai, you said you don't practice silat because you don't have time. But if you had time, or how would you make time for yourself, you think? Or how could someone help you make time to pursue sort of these side interests?
I mean, silat to me is more of like a research interest than I wanna do silat. You get what I mean? So I'm more interested in studying it as a subject rather than taking part in the action. So you could say it's kind of like an anthropological endeavor for me, rather than something that I want to get into and get my hands sort of dirty in it. Yeah.
Well, is there any particular things you want to, or do you have time to actually do that research? And
yeah, so I mean, I read a lot anyway, so it's part of my.
Well, how do you find the time to when you're not making money? I mean.
I mean, because I'm a freelance writer, so there are times where I won't have any projects, or so it's about balancing my schedule, and usually I do make time for like reading and stuff.
Do you think there's any way that we can encourage, because you make paintings and they're sort of quite financially marketable works, and Dipali, you make slightly more difficult to collect works. Is there any way that we can sort of provide better infrastructure to then support artists whose practices lie outside of commodifiable work?
So yeah, I think that Singapore has a very good balance of this. There are a lot of galleries which are independent galleries which show video works. I've been thinking about this because you asked this question even before, and I think that as an artist, when you practice, it's also about the audience or the viewer, as well as about the so if the viewer is not educated towards, or the the collection is only of paintings, and they are not aware of how video works and how to collect video, then that's going to become difficult. So when you show these kind of works, like video works and new media works, it educates not only the audience that art can be in that particular way, but it also educates the collectors in terms of wanting to buy those kind of works. So independent spaces which show these kind of works, it's a good thing, and even if it doesn't sell, you should show them so that a larger audience gets to know about it, and it's an education that works both ways, an awareness that works both ways.
Well, I think before we go to questions, I hope we haven't painted too much of a grim future for these young students here. But
think so.
is there, Kai, do you have any sort of keen advice for young budding artists to not give up and keep practicing?
I'm not sure I'm the right person to ask that, but yeah, I think if it's something that really interests you, and it makes you happy, you should seriously consider really putting all your effort into it, because I feel like I mean, even like if the work itself is good enough, like eventually it'll find its way to whatever success that you desire, and that's just about patience, perseverance, and all those things that everyone keeps saying.
Is it that difficult to be an artist, you think, here in Singapore?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's okay. It's not hopeless. I think there's a lot of support, especially from like the state and funding and stuff like that. So you're not like totally alone in it, and there's a lot of key stakeholders in the art who are supportive of young artists and stuff.
Dipali, any advice?
I don't have advice, but I'll just tell what I believe in.
As a mother
so,
as
no. So the motto that I go by is, once I had gone to attend, there was a photography exhibition by Annie Leibovitz, and she had come to Singapore, and it was there at the Tanjong Pagar, the old railway station that's there. And so the one thing that I took away from what she was saying is that, believe what you're doing matters. So no matter what it is, don't have any self-doubt. Just believe that what you are creating and what you are thinking, it matters, because that adds a lot of confidence to what the kind of work that then comes out. So that, I think, is my motto by which I kind of go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe we should open it up to the floor, the young students here, if you have any questions for the artists or anyone in the back.
Does anyone have any questions?
Eric has a mic that he'll go around and...
Yeah. Otherwise, we can wrap up.
Okay, then thank you very much
Thank
for
you,
coming
thank
and
you.
joining us, and thank you
Thanks.
to the artists.